Thanks everyone for downloading another episode of the Detroit Sports Countdown podcast. On this podcast, we rank the top 5 stories in the world of Detroit sports. I am the Doc, John Macaroon. This fine podcast is produced by Kenneth Franzel, a man so humble that right away when the Tigers announced that Jordan Zimmerman would be their latest addition, right away tweeted us at Detroit Podcast. I told y'all this would happen. What's wrong with you? If you pay attention to our Twitter page at Detroit Podcast, Mr. Frenzel now is a active contributor. He's now a producer of the Detroit Sports Countdown podcast, and he's finding his way into our Twitter feed regularly with his harsh, brash opinions. Gotta love Kenny. Thank you so much for producing this fine podcast. I shoot him a tweet every now and then and be like, hey, what do you think for the podcast? And boom, right away he sends me a lot of messages, and we got a lot to get to on this podcast. But before we get started, we want to always give thanks to those who are supporting us, who find us and download the podcast across the network, across the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. You can find the vast arrays of shows on Podomatic, Stitcher, Podbay, iTunes, DetroitSportsPodcast.com, the Detroit Sports Nation website. So there should be no excuse why you don't find our podcast. We're rolling out 6 to 7 weekly podcasts with a lot of great opinions, a lot of great topics, some specific podcasts. We even get a chance to maybe interview those who dare get interviewed by the Doc. I really get a chance to kind of interview those who I find to be fascinating and who will give me the time of day, and I've been loving it. Detroit Sports Podcast Network is growing, and we're not going to stop. Whenever there's news to be made, we're trying to get people on, and we love the whole podcast medium. And this podcast is dedicated to just kind of talking about the weekly events, giving my opinions, and ranking them in the order that the Doc sees fit. And there are also several stories that don't make the top 5 countdown, but are definitely worth mentioning in what we call the Kenny Franzel honorable mentions. And to start off, not too much high school football talk on the podcast. I know a lot of people enjoy high school football on Friday nights, Thursday nights. They get out and about and enjoy a lot of high school football action. A lot of people also look at recruits and who's going to be replacing some of these great players at Michigan, Michigan State, Central. A lot of people follow it and are really into high school football. Not myself, not so much, but definitely this weekend was a great weekend for the state of Michigan and high school football. The high school teams wrapped up in the state finals in a game that really got a lot of attention just based on the way the game ended. Detroit and Martin Luther King was trailing 10-6 going into the fourth quarter in a tight game versus Warren De La Salle, and they played a solid game, very tight defensively, but what everyone remembers, what everyone's going to talk about is the Hail Mary at the end of the game, a play that even I think made SportsCenter because of the fact that it was such a miraculous play. Always when you get a chance to see a Hail Mary, it's so shocking because a lot of things have to fall your way. Warren De La Salle came into the game 13-0, and they played spectacular football throughout the year. Going up against Warren De La Salle was a tight defensive struggle. And in the end, Detroit Martin Luther King comes away with a victory. They come away with the state title in a very exciting game, and they make the Kenny Franzel honorable mentions. Another Kenny Franzel honorable mention goes out to Denzel Valentine, who had started off the season playing very solid basketball. A lot of people thought that Valentine could have NBA potential, but coming out with triple-doubles, playing a solid brand of basketball for Coach Izzo could make this a special season for Michigan State. A season where there could be some elevated expectations because Izzo got a strong recruiting class, Valentine's playing well, and Tom Izzo is desperate. Each and every season now you're starting to see that Tom Izzo really, really wants to get that second NCAA title because a lot of people are talking about the fact that, well, a lot of coaches can maybe get one. That doesn't cement you as being a solid elite level coach. And he always is compared to Coach K. He's always compared to a lot of the coaches in college basketball who have multiple titles, and I really believe Tom Izzo is a strong competitor. Now, the Michigan State basketball program could have a strong presence here on this very podcast with some of the news and notes that were made this week, but Denzel Valentine as a player is emerging. He's playing a solid brand of basketball, and he's going to be a player to watch for the remainder of this season in that when it comes time to March and it's time to really step up your game, can he be that senior leader that can get Michigan State to the next level? Tom Izzo's been to the Final Four so often, and he now wants to take that next step and win that second title. And he might get it. He's been bringing in stronger recruits, and now I do believe that Tom Izzo has surveyed the landscape. He's seen what Kentucky has done. He's now even seen what Duke has done. These coaches are now willing to bring in guys that maybe one and done players. You're going to have to because NBA money is super solid, and you can't expect these guys, these young cats who come in and play basketball for your team, to just, hold off on getting a super large paycheck. You can't expect that. You can't expect these 18-year-olds who are solid NBA players, who have reasonable talent, that are developmental talents. You can't expect them to stay in college and deal with academics when you have potentially a large contract ahead of you at a young age. And so Tom Izzo, I believe now, is more willing to take those guys, and he's going to have to find that right combination of guys that may leave after 1 year, but also guys that can stay in the program all 4 years. And anyone that's listening, and any young basketball player, if you go to Michigan State, you're going to develop, and most likely, there's only been one class of guys who hasn't made the Final Four who's played under Tom Izzo. With that said, you're going to have success, you're going to have national exposure, and you're going to have a strong chance of having a solid NBA career. Look at a la Draymond Green, who's just showering the program with love. So Denzel Valentine, he earns a Kenny Frenzel honorable mention. Well, let's get into this countdown. The top 5 stories this week in the world of Detroit sports. A lot to get into, and also I give a little bit of commentary, give my opinions, and try to earn Kenny Frenzel's respect each and every week. So now I do know at least he does listen to this each and every podcast, because I think it's perfect. 30 minutes out of your day. I know Kenny's listening because each and every week when this podcast comes out, I am getting a tweet, I am getting a text regarding whatever the hell it is I'm doing here on this podcast, and with some strong opinions, and I would have it no other way. All right, number 5. Obviously, we just spent a few minutes talking about Denzel Valentine and the Michigan State college basketball program. The leader of the program, Tom Izzo, earned a prestigious milestone this week. He got win number 500, and wow. And it just goes to show you the level of consistency that he has brought to the program, and what he's really done is elevate the Michigan State basketball program to an even higher place than it was before. Now, before Tom Izzo got there, the Michigan State program had success. They won the 1979 NCAA title. They produced one of the finest NBA basketball players of all time in Magic Johnson. So the Michigan State program had some respect, but at the time, it didn't, at the time when Tom Izzo took over, they weren't at the level where they consistently made the Final Four, where they consistently brought in talent, where they consistently had performances that made you go, wow. And in his first year, he struggled a little bit. A lot of people were like, is this assistant who worked a long time under Judd Heathcote? Is he the guy? Should Michigan State have gone out and gotten a national guy, or should Michigan State have gone out and gotten maybe someone with more experience as a head coach? Because that season, I believe he went 16-16, and he started off his career early on when I was a freshman at Michigan State, and so you kind of got to see the early stages of Tom Izzo and how he was fiery, how he would demand excellence, how he would get in these players' faces. And so he tried right away, and he pulled no punches. And at the time, it was very much a continuation of what the program had saw, because Judd Heathcote was no joke either on the sidelines. Towards the tail end, and watching him, he would be very animated on the sidelines, and some very legendary footage of him on the sidelines having these emotional meltdowns when there were bad calls and things like that. But Tom Izzo was very unique in terms of his motivational tactics. A lot of great stories of him, during tournament games, during tournament runs, get up on tables, smash things, and be very fiery, kind of like a football coach. And his relationship with Steve Mariucci definitely played a part in his success. His ability to bounce ideas off another great coach, his friend, one of the guys that he turns to in order to get some advice and some support along the way. Tom Izzo won a national title in 2000. It was fabulous. I mean, a fabulous run with the Flintstones. And then in the early 2000s and in the last several seasons, he's taken the program to several Final Fours and gotten several great wins. Several great players have gone through the program, and so Tom Izzo's never-ending quest to make the Michigan State program a success has really, really, been effective, and has taken the Michigan State athletic program even to newer heights alongside the football team. So Tom Izzo is working tirelessly. He's trying his absolute best to bring in the best kind of guys to run a clean program. And, Tom Izzo's done a fairly decent job. You don't hear too many stories of NCAA violations. You don't hear too many stories of guys who are causing a lot of trouble. Now, Michigan State has fallen into definitely some talk regarding some players who left early, who maybe could have stayed longer. Marcus Taylor's one of them who got some bad advice from his family, went to the NBA and, went away and never really amounted to much in his career. I think a player like Marcus Taylor, was just a sign of some things to come in terms of players leaving early. But with that, Tom Izzo's built a strong program. He's built a program that has garnered a lot of respect. But now the talk is win the second NCAA title. Everyone knows that Coach K is the benchmark, is the standard of a guy that's done a lot of great things along with winning several titles. And I do believe that it does burn Tom Izzo that he does have a losing record against Coach K. And, whenever Michigan State would play Duke, there were very few instances where Michigan State dominated Duke. Coach K is a solid coach, one of the greatest coaches of all time. And I do believe that Tom Izzo is motivated by the fact that he hasn't done that great against the elite coaches out there, and now his goal is to really to maintain the level of the Michigan State basketball program, and he's going to have to do that because it's getting tougher and tougher when you got teams like Kentucky, you got teams like Duke who are now willing to just take these guys who are going to stay 1 year, kind of not really pay attention much to the academics, get in there, play their one season of basketball, and move on. Tom Izzo's prided himself on bringing in guys that are going to play 4 years, they're going to be solid citizens, that are going to grow and develop, and now if he really wants to continue to maintain the status of the Michigan State program, he's got a stronghold here in Michigan. He's got, a lot of young talent that comes in from the state of Michigan. He's going to have to reach out and get that big name. I mean, he struck out a couple times, and one of the big names that he struck out on was Jabari Parker. Michigan State heavily recruited him. He went to Duke, and it was really just kind of a situation where it's kind of like Michigan State and Duke went head-to-head on a recruit, and what's interesting was Jabari Parker said that he wanted to stay close to home. His home was in Chicago, but he went off to Duke. So, in the end, it was kind of a little bit of a blow, a little bit of a knock to Tom Izzo's ego in terms of landing nationally elite talent, but they do a great job of getting these great recruits and develop them and make them into solid basketball players. And now Draymond Green has, elevated himself to be a solid basketball player, earned a big contract, and is now giving back and has stated, Tom Izzo's done a great job with me, and I will forever be grateful for him seeing and believing more in me than I did in myself. So Tom Izzo earned his 500th victory this week, the number 5 story this week in the world of Detroit sports. All right, breaking news for the Tigers. They have, late Saturday evening, it came out that the Tigers were actively and seriously negotiating with Jordan Zimmerman, the pitcher from the Washington Nationals. And a lot of people earlier this spring and summer when we were speculating regarding who the Tigers might bring in as a starting pitcher, because Al Avila did say, my target is to get a couple of starting pitchers. A lot of people thought, well, Jordan Zimmerman could be a guy that could be targeted, but is his price tag going to be too much? Because the guys like Greinke, guys like Johnny Cueto, guys like David Price are going to command well over $200 million. And if the Tigers were going to be fiscally conservative in the offseason in terms of their spending, then it would not make real sense to bring in a guy like Jordan Zimmerman, who was going to probably be in that $100 to $125 million range in terms of his overall contract. And so now, earlier Sunday, it came out that the Tigers have signed him, and the likely terms are 5 years, $110 million. Guaranteed. All 5 years, no options, things like that. So most people are speculating that the contract is $22 million per season. And when that number came out, my initial reaction was, ooh, that's a lot of money for a 29-year-old pitcher. But the overall contract value is less than what was offered to Max Scherzer. I do believe it might fit into the structure of the cap that the Tigers are working with right now. Al Avila made it clear that Mike Ilitch has given him the blessing to sign players that he believes will help this ball club. So when the initial numbers came out, we all thought that the payroll might go down with the Tigers. They might spend a little bit less, but with another guy making $20 million on the team, they are sure racking up contracts there with guys that have guaranteed money over $20 million. I mean, you got Miguel, you got JV, now you add Jordan Zimmerman. The Tigers are not backing down in terms of their spending. Now, the questions you may have regarding Jordan Zimmerman are probably pretty valid. He has not missed a start in 4 years. He is pretty durable, and he is considered one of the top-of-the-line free agent pitchers that was available. Now, though, you look at his numbers from last year, and it might lead you to believe, is he a guy that's going to elevate his game coming to Comerica Park? The thought from Al Avila is, okay, this is a guy that features stuff that might fit very well in Comerica Park in terms of getting fly balls, pitching to contact, and also Zimmerman features some good stuff and can get guys out via strikeout. But the concern that people have initially now is last year's numbers that he produced weren't that good. Statistically, his worst season was the 2015 season, and he didn't pitch that well towards the tail end of the season. And so people are like, is this a guy now that is tailing off, and now you've guaranteed him $22 million per for the next 5 years? So Al Avila is banking on the fact that Jordan Zimmerman can come in here in between JV and Anibal Sanchez and be that solid number 2. I really believe he can. I think he's going to have a strong chance for success, especially at a pitcher-friendly Comerica Park. But there is going to be a right for people to be a little bit anxious, especially in terms of the length of the contract. 5 years, $22 million per. Are we going to get the return on the investment when he's 33 and 34 years old? When you're paying a guy like that, you're going to have basically going in the next few seasons down the line, you're going to have upwards of $140 million each and every year guaranteed to guys well into their 30s. So that could be a source of concern if the moves that are made by new general manager Al Avila don't result in a World Series. They need to deliver a World Series because the Tigers are throwing good money after bad here. You're bringing on guys with big contracts, and you still haven't developed that minor league system. So they're definitely going for it, and I do believe if they do get that World Series, it'll definitely quiet all the naysayers. But long term, Adam and I have talked about it. Adam Strozinski, the jock, he's wrote about it, that the Tigers can't consistently do this if they want to sustain long-term success. Now, in the not-too-distant future, in this season and next season, okay, you can kind of throw some money at some players, but you're going to need to deliver long playoff runs and a World Series ring because your payroll is ever climbing, and it's not getting smaller. So Al Avila's first couple moves, bringing in K-Rod, the closer, and Jordan Zimmerman, A+, good job, but it does leave room for speculation, room for concern if these guys don't pan out, if they don't have success early on. Because right now, the Tigers pretty much have a little bit of, the fans are a little bit resentful toward the Tigers for, bringing on Brad Ausmus, for keeping them, for the, inability to bring home a World Series with the vast array of talent that they had. So right now, the Tigers fans are kind of patiently waiting. They're cautiously optimistic, but you do get a sense that if the Tigers start off to a rough start, that the fans are going to turn on this team rather quickly because of the lack of patience waiting for a good team. And the fact of the matter is, you brought back a manager who kind of had a bad 2015 managerial season. So the Tigers signing Jordan Zimmerman, number 4 story this week in the world of Detroit sports. Number 3 ranked story this week. Wow. Everybody this week kind of was buying into the fact that Ohio State was going to struggle, was going to kind of have a hangover from the loss to Michigan State, and oh boy, they did not. And I'm kind of curious if the whole Harbaugh going to the gravesite with his crew and some fans really didn't, and that came out in papers and nationally. I wonder if that didn't put a little bit of extra motivation for Ohio State. Not that they needed it. I mean, the Michigan-Ohio State game is very passionate, is a game that brings out all the fans. It's a national game. It did a strong rating on Saturday afternoon. I think it did a 6.8 nationally. So the game it doesn't need a whole lot to, kind of bring out the passion on both sides. But a lot of people thought that with the whole Chad Tuff situation, the passing of Lloyd Carr's grandson, that there would be some extra motivation on Michigan's side to play well and to honor Chad Carr's memory. But in the end, Ohio State and Urban Meyer exposed every single one of Michigan's weaknesses in terms of difficulty tackling, the run game, difficulty keeping up offensively, and Ezekiel Elliott and the Ohio State run game. Wow. Michigan had no answers for JT Barrett, no answers for Ezekiel Elliott, and they got rolled in Harbaugh's first game versus Ohio State, and in front of 111,000 people at the Big House. Can't have that. I mean, Brady Hoke teams who you thought were not talented, and if you thought Brady Hoke was, a joke of a coach, he actually had his guys play better games versus Ohio State than did Jim Harbaugh. And so what happened? Why wasn't Michigan? It looked like in the third quarter that Michigan tired out. It looked like that definitely the offensive line of Ohio State, wore out the University of Michigan Wolverines, and that's a concern. Now, a lot of people are making excuses, and now Michigan fans are engaging in similar battles versus each other, like Lions fans do. Like you have a strong group of Michigan fans who have witnessed the last decade of dominance of their rivals. Ohio State has dominated Michigan. Michigan State has dominated Michigan. They're not used to seeing that, and so when the game ended, you saw a little bit of anger from the Michigan fans, and then you saw the other side of Michigan fans who were like, "Easy, guys." Michigan now is 9-3. Jim Harbaugh came in and took Brady Hoke's 5-win team and took them to 9 wins. They beat teams that they were supposed to beat. But in the end, I agree with those who are a little bit upset. This is Michigan. You can't go out there and get trucked by your rival at home. You got embarrassed. And Jim Harbaugh was brought here to win games versus Michigan State, was brought here to win games versus Ohio State. But in the end, this year, all he did what he was supposed to do. He came in and he beat the teams that he was supposed to, but he was 0-3 versus solid teams. He lost to Utah, lost to State, lost to Ohio State. So you got no signature wins. Oh, great, you beat Penn State. Oh, great, you beat the likes of Rutgers. Oh, great, you beat the likes of Minnesota. Okay, that's not going to earn you the respect of fans that are hardcore. Jim Harbaugh had the respect and nationally had the respect and was written about like he was like the next big thing. So where was that signature win? It didn't come. And you played a great game versus Michigan State, but you couldn't close. You did not show up versus Ohio State. And whether you could say Ohio State dominated that game or whether you could say that Michigan didn't take them seriously, I don't know what you can say. But that performance was not great, and it definitely was eye-opening and caused a lot of anger with those Michigan fans. Now, as a Sparty, I'm sitting here going, yeah, that's what happens. Michigan State had a great game plan. We got lucky with the weather, and we were able to get the victory. And I'm just wondering when Michigan's next game is. Oh yeah, it's not gonna happen because their season's over, and Michigan State goes on. We got a chance for all the marbles. If you pay attention to the podcast, we might be talking about it very soon. But Michigan State's gonna have a chance to play for all the marbles in 1 week. So I'm very excited to talk about it. But Michigan losing in a dominant fashion to Ohio State is the number 3 ranked story this week in the world of Detroit sports. So sorry, Michigan fans. Just like the Lions fans, always next year. All right, the number 2 story this week, obviously, Mark D'Antonio and his Michigan State Spartans dominating, finally putting things together and putting a hurting on Penn State. A lot of people were talking nationally, okay, this is a Michigan State team that's just been eking out victories, eking out wins week in, week out. Had a bad loss versus Nebraska on the road. Controversial as it may be, they just didn't play well enough to win. They didn't earn it. They didn't earn that victory versus Nebraska. Okay, but it's tough week in, week out to go undefeated. Now, people say, oh, yeah, that Sparty should have went to Nebraska and won. Well, okay, it's fine, but, it's very tough to have an undefeated season. But Michigan State has done as much as humanly possible this season to give themselves a chance to go to the college football playoff. And that was the goal. The goal was get to the playoff, see how you match up versus the elite, and maybe, just maybe, if you peak at the right time, then maybe you have a chance to win that first semifinal game and get to that final game, and maybe, just maybe, have a chance to win the national title. And Michigan State has given themselves that chance. They dominated versus Penn State, and Connor Cook came back with a great performance. The run game was great. The defense played well. Got some turnovers from Penn State's quarterback, Hackenberg. We played a solid game at home in front of the fans, and unfortunately, that's what it takes nowadays. It takes blowouts. It takes putting a hurting on teams to kind of get the attention of these pollsters, of people who may not peak in and week out. But you can no longer disrespect Michigan State. Mark D'Antonio has produced 11 wins in several seasons. He's done some great things. He's taken now his football club to the Big Ten title game 3 years when the whole thing, the Big Ten in the past did not have the Big Ten championship game. It's only been in existence now for 5 years, and Michigan State's been there in 3 of them. Think about that. In a conference with, in a division, the East Division with Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan State's represented the East 3 times now out of 5 years. So Mark D'Antonio doesn't have nothing to complain about. He has nothing to worry about. He just has to produce a solid game plan versus Iowa. And it's going to be no easy task to defeat Iowa. I see another close game, another game that's going to be a fourth quarter game, and probably a 4-hour epic battle. But Michigan State's done all it can do to put itself in the position. If they win the game, they're ranked number 5 right now in the coaches poll, in the college football poll, in the AP poll, I believe as well. They'll put themselves in that position to get to their ultimate goal and have that ultimate success. They'll get a chance to play in the college football playoff if they win the game. And some great things have happened. Notre Dame People were like, well, will Notre Dame get in? Da 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 da. I just sat back and said, okay, if Notre Dame had to defeat Stanford, and a lot of talk now is Notre Dame should join a conference if they want to get in. It's likely that they might have to, but they're making so much money with their exposure. They're not tied to anybody. All they got to do is execute. It's so funny that Notre Dame fans, they just going to have to sit and wait another year. But it was set up for them. You defeat Stanford, you likely were going to be in because Notre Dame has that national respect. But they did us a favor. They lost. Now if we can just get one of those other teams in the top 4 to lose ahead of us, hey. But Michigan State, in the end, we don't need anybody to do anything for us. Win the game versus Iowa, and we will handle our business. And it's great. We'll be in the top 4. And all our dreams, everything that we want is ahead of us. I just can't wait to see the game versus Iowa with the chance, one game, to get to the college football playoff. And that's the goal each and every year now at Michigan State. Michigan State has a solid chance to do some damage if they play a great game on offense, if they can step up and take advantage of the turnover situation, if they can make those keep strong plays, then we have a chance versus Iowa. And I can't wait for the next game in Indy. Michigan State has taken residence there in Indianapolis. College football, ESPN, game day is going to be there. More exposure for D'Antonio in the program, and it's just great. A lot of recruits were visiting versus Penn State, and it's just a great experience because a lot of recruits are seeing all the fun and winning that the program has had and experienced. I mean, Michigan State has done a lot of great things under D'Antonio, and he's now, I do believe, is getting the respect that he deserves. I mean, he's not going to outwin the coverage, with Harbaugh and Meyer and things like that, but all he keeps doing is winning. Just keep producing 11-win seasons, man. That's all you got to do. And Michigan State is producing great memories for all the fans in the last 5 seasons, and it's just been a great ride. And maybe it can be capped off with the playoff run and a national title win. I can't imagine what I would be like if they won the national title. All right, the number 1 story this week, thank you for waiting out the countdown. The number 1 story this week, the Detroit Lions' dominant performance on Thanksgiving versus the Eagles. They've gotten back to 4-7 with 3 straight victories since everything's gone down. Interesting, since that 1-7 start, you've now got a chance to get 3 straight victories. A lot of talk now regarding what's going to happen with management. First of all, the Lions' performance on Thanksgiving was dominant. They took advantage of a team that was struggling on defense. Now I can't get too high because Chip Kelly and the Eagles gave up 45 and 5 touchdowns to Jameis Winston in Tampa Bay. So knowing that, you fully expected that the Lions were going to probably have had a likelihood of having strong success versus that defense and versus a secondary that was struggling and then who got an injury in that game as well. So it made it much more difficult for the Eagles defense to keep the Lions off the scoreboard. And the Lions played so well on offense. They were purring, and Jim Bob Cooter has changed this offense, and it looks like, from what we're watching now, the offense that we expected to see back when the season started. Everyone was like, we do have concerns. This offense isn't kind of clicking like it should. And some people would say, well, you got to give it time. Well, okay, Jim Bob Cooter's come in about 4 weeks, has kind of made the offense purr. We've scored 45. We've moved the ball a little bit better. Now in the first couple of games of the win streak, you scored 18, but the offense looked better. You had more flow. You had more first downs. You had more sustained drives. You utilized Calvin Johnson. You utilized the other guys on the team. Now you definitely tried to get Ebron involved, but he can't maintain consistency, so he's not going to get the ball. But you've seen now Golden Tate resurge. So this is what the offense should have looked like. And what's going to happen in the future? Jim Bob Cooter is going to have a successful career as an offensive coordinator and maybe even a head football coach. He's done a great job here, and now he's turned the offense around, and it looks a lot better. Now, in the front office, the Lions made some news as well in that Rod Wood met with Ernie Accorsi, who has done a lot of work across the NFL in terms of placing general managers, in terms of bringing the right people into the right situations. Early as last year, he helped the Bears with their general manager and head coach search, and he got John Fox. He was instrumental in bringing John Fox from Denver over to Chicago. And look what they did. They recently won on the road versus Green Bay on Thanksgiving. And, the team is now in place to kind of maybe fix, quote unquote, Jay Cutler. So a lot of people are talking that, okay, the former Giants general manager, can he come in and solidify the management positions at the Lions? And people are kind of whispering that, is Ernie Accorsi going to bring in his own guys? Is he going to favor his friends? Is he actually going to look at the best candidates out there? I truly believe so. Ernie Accorsi has a lot of respect across the National Football League, and I do believe this is a home run hire. This is a guy that's going to come in and he's going to do his darndest best to bring the Lions the best people in the front office. Whether that be Sheldon White, keeping Caldwell, those are going to be questions that are going to be answered in the future. But I do believe the Lions, with the move to bring in Ernie Accorsi, they have done the right thing. They have now a paid consultant, a paid man that's going to go out there. He is going to look out there and do a big search and bring in the best talent for the organization. Now, whether that's going to pan out, that's going to be for us to speculate and look at who's going to be the general manager. But bringing in Ernie Accorsi is a great move. Rod Wood and Martha Ford have done a great job. The Lions have been on the rise the last 3 weeks. Our very own Jerry Mallory's calling out the fans, saying, hey, why would you be against the Lions winning? This looks good. You're having fun. Very interesting take on his last Hindsight 20 podcast. But I do believe that those who are questioning the victories are just wanting the football team to do the best they can, and we want to ensure change. Losing will ensure change, but the Lions have brought in a guy that I do believe is not going to bring back Sheldon White because he's not the best candidate, and I don't think that he's a guy that's going to be able to really turn things around in terms of bringing in the talent that he needs, bringing in the guys that he's supposed to do. He's not going to get that chance, I don't believe. I think Ernie Accorsi is going to go out there and get someone, hopefully from the Packers or hopefully from the Patriots, and bring him here to do the job. They're continuing to maintain their number one spot on the Detroit Sports Countdown podcast, and they're the number one story this week with their great performances. Lately, their performance versus the Eagles on Thanksgiving and bringing in Ernie Accorsi from the outside, paying him some money and bringing some winners here for the Detroit Lions. Thank you so much for listening. I appreciate your time. Great 30 minutes every Sunday. Thank you. Check out all the other podcasts on the Detroit Sports Podcast Network. Follow us on Twitter at Detroit Podcast. Visit our website, DetroitSportsPodcast.com. You can follow us for all the news and notes regarding the network. We greatly appreciate it. See you all next week.